3 religions given new mechanics, a bunch of missions for native tribes, updates to governing capacity in the UI, and finally a bit of information on the Philippines. The last 2 months of EU4 1.31 Dev Diaries have had a lot of stuff in them. My name is Quagersall, and today we're going to get fully caught up on the 1.31 Dev Diaries for Europa Universalis IV. This video focuses on the Dev Diaries from late October, November, and December. If you missed my last video, we went over the diaries from late September into October. I have a playlist with that and weekly Dev Diary videos from August and early September, so check those out if you're interested. We've got a lot to cover, so let's jump in. If you want to skip around or rewatch any section, I've put timestamps in the description which should make video chapters show up on the video. I've also included links to the Dev Diaries themselves so you can read in further detail if you want. After weeks dealing with native tribes in the Americas and Southeast Asia before that, the Dev Diary for October 20th shifted focus to religious mechanics updates. 2 fan favorite religions, Sikhism and Zoroastrianism. First up is Sikhism. Previously, if you played a Sikh nation, you'd get modifiers throughout the years by event based on the historical guru of the time period, removing the modifier from the last guru. In effect, this made the religion not very adaptive, or in my opinion, very interesting. They've changed away from an event-based to a mechanics-based for the gurus. You still get gurus over the decades, but now, when each one of them is alive, there's 3 different teachings you can select to be used by them. And upon the death of the guru, whichever teaching you had last selected will become permanent. You can eventually have 6 stacked teachings in this way. Enacting them costs 50 monarch points, either admin, diplo, or mill power, and reduces missionary strength by 1. This means towards the end of the campaign, Sikhism may have some powerful stacked modifiers, but also would have trouble converting land. Sikhism is the 5th largest religion in the world, and the youngest of the top 5. It has had converts from mainly Hindu and Islam over the years, but does not normally seek to spread itself outside of its epicenter in what is now the Punjab region of India. So I can see why these modifiers fit the religion thematically. I'm just not sure negative 6% missionary strength will be something most people want to take on. Maybe you can just make Sikh subjects and convert their land before you integrate them. I don't know. We'll see. Eventually they'd show off the Sikh gurus and their teachings specifically in the November 10th Dev Diary, but I'll talk about those on that week so I don't repeat myself too much. Now for Zoroastrianism. Almost the opposite of Sikhism in that it is likely the oldest significant religion continually practiced in the world. Zoroastrianism is being given a holy sites mechanic not dissimilar to how Coptic works in the game. If Zoroastrian nations own the 5 holy provinces and those provinces also practice the religion, then every Zoroastrian nation will be able to unlock bonuses, referred to as rituals as opposed to the Coptic blessings. There are 5, including corruption reduction, goods produced modifiers, missionary strength, governing capacity, and construction costs. While this mechanic does tie into the Rekindle the Flames achievement, it is kind of weird how close the mechanics relate to the Coptics. And once you start looking at the bonuses for Coptic blessings, I think these Zoroastrian rituals come up lacking. It might be nice to give a duality mechanic, maybe not too different from the way Sunni worked, with piety to play off of Zoroastrianism's dual good and evil cosmology, or at least give them 1 or 2 military focused rituals. I don't know, but I am glad it's getting some mechanics. That's a definite plus. On a lighter note, if you didn't know, Grugi has a pet hedgehog. He mentions that the hedgehog is considered something of a sacred animal among the Zoroastrians. So he used this opportunity to show off his, that he named Lord Cyrus. Also, if you didn't know, he streams on Twitch, playing EU4 and all kinds of strategy games. Fun guy to watch, not gonna lie. The October 27th Dev Diary dealt with some new mechanics, presumably available to all nations, although likely tied behind the paid DLC for this patch to help manage governing capacity. They made 2 UI changes that should be helpful. First, they give us an indicator of governing capacity saved when building town halls, courthouses, and presumably state houses. The second is showing how much governing capacity a subject has total and is using on the subject screen, which should help to know how much to grow your subjects. This one is particularly nice, as even in the previous state slot mechanic, this was hard information to find for your subjects. They also added a new feature, the ability to use governing capacity to add a building slot to a province. Now, I mentioned this would be helpful for countries playing tall, but due to the way governing capacity works off of dev and not number of provinces, I'm not sure that's exactly the case. It might be useful in very specific circumstances where you're playing a small nation though, but it would need to be small in dev and province count in my opinion. Basically, you pay 200 governing capacity on a province with at least 15 dev, and you get an additional building slot. He confirmed that you can repeat this for 200 more governing capacity every 15 more dev, and that the slot that is added can be used for normal buildings or additional manufactories. A short dev diary, 2 nice UI changes / additions, and this interesting new building slot mechanic. Someone might be able to use this to make some amazing capitals in a tiny country or something, but unless the governing capacity investment is reduced by quite a bit, I don't think this will be very good. I may be wrong, of course. Moving to the next week, the dev diary for November 3rd was also a short one, mainly revealing some tidbits of information from a large survey they did on the PDX forums. 10,000 people responded, with over half of those claiming to have more than 1,000 hours in the game. We apparently overwhelmingly prefer simulation over board game mechanics. Think there should be more focus on the economical side of the game and flavorful content. And also, as a community, we once again told PDX that Golden Century sucked. I'm happy that my pick for the best DLC was also in the top in this survey. If you missed my video on why Art of War is in my opinion the best DLC for EU4, check it out in the iCard. He moved on to show a list of the most played countries in EU4 right now. They've put lists out like this before, but I was interested that Brandenburg and England dropped so low. They used to be much higher on these lists, but I feel like the order of the list is basically the only thing that's changed from previous lists, as far as I've seen, or can remember. I've often thought about doing short guide videos for EU4 nations. I suppose if I did, this would be the list to start with. The dev diary wasn't all fluff though. A couple small changes were mentioned. Victory cards in multiplayer are now causing your estates to take a small hit if you stay friends with someone who has your victory card. And Cossacks with the Sikh government being able to raise cities like hordes. Pretty small things, but one big announcement in this dev diary was a new unit mission called Carpet Siege. Similar to hunting rebels, but with the difference that the army will avoid combat unless it is sure of winning, and focus on sieging down hostile territory. You can set target areas or just let it decide on its own. Presumably, this means just enabling the same AI the enemy would use against you in a war, set to maybe like a passive siege-only setting. But it's a welcome addition and hopefully will work well. We'll have to see. Back to the topic of religion. After showing off Sikhism and Zoroastrianism, many people wondered why Totemism hadn't gotten mechanics, since North America is one of the main focuses of this patch and DLC. Lo and behold, the dev diary on November 10th did in fact detail new mechanics for Totemism. Now, Grugy talks early in the diary about how they're using the term Totemism as a catch-all for a number of different religious families among tribes indigenous to the Americas, and attempting to make mechanics that feel right for all of them is difficult. But he decided to do a mechanic that focuses around legendary historical figures or ancestors, which is something that is shared by most cultures of the Americas. As rulers die, you can spend 100 Diplo points to take a weak version of that ruler's trait as a permanent modifier. Eventually you can stack up to 10 of these modifiers, and even remove old ones to add new ones for stability hits, although it's not said how big that stability hit is. To make up for eventually having so many modifiers, even if they are weaker, rulers in Totemism inherently only have one trait. But they may eventually be super god rulers with a bunch of different modifiers from their ancestors. He didn't clarify if you can stack the same ancestor trait. I'm imagining having 10 ancestors who give you the 2.5 discipline and an active ruler with 5% discipline. That's 30%, and you haven't even factored in idea groups, national ideas, or events. It could be super broken, so I assume they're not going to allow that. He did, however, clarify the guru bonuses from Sikhism discussed back on October 20th. First, each guru gives +1 monarch skill while they're alive, and their teachings are listed here below their names. Several have pretty powerful ones: tech cost, manpower, morale, discipline. permanent +1 to a monarch skill, dev cost reductions, army professionalism, the list abounds. I really like how flexible this could be. You could stack all kinds of military advantages with this religion, or you could stack all kinds of stability and diplomacy advantages. Still not sure if the missionary strength malice for each teaching is realistic for the long term, but I'm anxious to see how good this religion really is when we finally get to play 1.31. Returning back to North America, the November 17th Dev Diary focused around new missions for native tribes. Some tribes are grouped geographically. First up is the tribes in the northeast, near and to the right of the Great Lakes. Their main missions involve building tall, preparing for war, and conquering the areas around the Great Lakes and then towards the Canadian coastline. Across the continent, in the southwest, the missions Against the Desert and Taming the Sands deal with the Chihuahuan Desert, the cultivation of the yucca palm trees, and turquoise mining. One mission deals with Pakwime, the ancestral home of the Mogollon people, apparently burned down around 1340. If you can take over the area and rebuild the city, you get construction and dev cost reductions, for instance. Some mission trees are given to tribes based on their culture instead of geography. Here, the Iroquois cultured tribes, those that would eventually be part of the Iroquois Confederation, and those not, will all have access to Iroquois missions, focused on gaining allies, building up the nation, as well as spy networks. Iroquois nations also receive special events like the Morning Wars, shown here, that allow you to presumably attack other tribes to steal some of their people or execute them. He's vague about the event chain, but it could be interesting. This Dev Diary acted as something of a part 1 to next week's part 2. Continuing the theme of native missions, the November 24th Dev Diary jumps straight into a new generic mission tree for all native nations. As Alderon put it, from the northwestern pass to Tierra del Fuego. He promised that you can actually complete this one as a native tribe, unlike the previous generic one. This tree also has a mission called Reform Our Religion. That's for the 3 more advanced native groups, the Aztecs, Inca, and Maya, to deal with the mechanics of their religions, despite not being a focus of this expansion. The first specific mission branch that they showed off in this diary was one for the Plains tribes, like the Lakota, Dakota, grouped into the Sioux, Shoshone, the Wichita. There's a lot of them. This group's focus revolves around hunting the bison, otherwise known as buffalo, and would relatively quickly evolve into a horse riding culture after the contact with Europeans. According to Alderon, most would say these tribes are some of the most iconic Native American groups, and I agree with him. The missions themselves focus on building economic power, forming and maintaining federations, and getting your hands on some horses. Moving to the northwest, the mission tree for this area of the continent reflected the brutal raiding cultures that were common in this area. It was the norm for tribes to canoe down what is now the west coast of the US to capture slaves, all the way south into California. But war and slavery were not the only things they focused on. Being some of the oldest and most complex social structures on the continent, they had complex wealth rituals, including the potlatch ceremony, that forms a mission here, where they sought to awe their people or their enemies with their wealth and elaborate ancestor totems. The mission tree focused on uniting your own people, bringing you closer to your allies, and striking fear into the hearts of your enemies. Shifting away from missions, they showed off a few national idea sets, including California Native ideas. Despite being the smallest cultural region for the Native American tribes, they are described as having a very pronounced personality, rich with dense populations, but able to live off the abundant land without much farming. They were apparently not very warfaring, presumably especially when compared to the Northwesterners. Their ideas themselves could make for a stable nation with things like global unrest -2, accepted culture bonus, religious unity bonus, stability cost bonus, but they also have autonomy, change time, and years of separatism reduction, which could be good for conquest. All in all, though, not military focused at all, especially again when compared to the Northwest. The Northwestern national ideas aren't amazing for military, but they at least have infantry shock, land leader maneuver, improved relations along with army tradition decay reduction. Add in the same global unrest -2, culture acceptance, dev cost reductions. I'd say it's a bit better idea group, although it doesn't blow me away. I do, however, like that they are getting idea sets. He mentioned that there would be one for each of the 6 cultural regions they've established, and I noted that the idea sets say free on them, so it looks like you might not need the paid DLC to get these. That's always a nice touch. He ended off the Dev Diary by showing some events like the Kuksu cult, where you can sacrifice manpower and money for prestige and stability, or Peace in the Plains, where you can choose to calm or inflame tensions. The Potlatch, one of the northwestern missions, also has an event to allow you to purchase prestige and prestige decay reduction for a time. I'm hopeful that there are unique events like this all over the map. Ending off the diary, Alderaan mentioned that the California and Southeastern missions would not be shown until the release of the patch, and that also there will be Easter eggs, several tag-specific missions, and other goodies. We'll just have to see what those are. The next dev diary, that of December 1st, wasn't really a dev diary at all, but instead, because of the sickness among the EU4 dev team, it was simply an advertisement for the EU4 Grandest virtual LAN, which if you missed it, you should check it out because it was super fun. They mentioned a true gameplay dev diary for the next week, but unfortunately, that wouldn't come until 2 weeks later. Presumably, the impending holidays and continued sickness of the dev team delayed them. The last dev diary before the new year, December 15th, saw Skingrado return the focus to Southeast Asia for the first time since way back on September 1st. This time touching on the Philippines, which many commenters on my first dev diary videos felt was a major miss. While there doesn't seem to be any map changes besides a color change to the northern tag of Pangasinan, they added missions to both Tondo and Madias. 6 the 2 tags share, along with 5 unique ones for Tondo and 4 unique ones for Madias. The Tondo specific missions involve developing forts and the economy, along with relations with Majapahit and China. The Madias missions involve building a new navy and returning to their ancestral home of Borneo to conquer it. The shared mission branch for the 2 tags involved uniting the Philippines themselves. Overall, the missions seem modest, and I assume they were added because so many people asked for something in the area. The Philippines had already been modified a few years back, so I don't think they originally planned to add anything here. At least we got something though, and maybe the Sun Invasion will be even more fun achievement now. That wasn't all they showed though. Palembang over on Sumatra is also receiving their own mission tree that will push them to be a naval power and to eventually conquer the islands of Sumatra and Java, presumably from there forming Nusantara or Malaya and continuing to conquest. Those tag changes and mission trees can be found in the earlier 1.31 dev diaries. All in all, I would say the dev diaries kind of sputtered out towards the end of the year, which is of course understandable with dev sickness and the holidays. But I'm excited to see what they have left to show for 1.31, and if there are any more big mechanics for the accompanying DLC. Let me know, who are you going to play in 1.31? What do you think is the most impactful change shown in these dev diaries? And what area or mechanic do you really wish they had included? I'll try to keep you guys posted on the dev diary news as it accumulates, because I know that some of you guys, like me, are big long-term fans of the game itself and want to know the changes, but don't really have time to sit and read the dev diaries. Until then though. Hey, you made it to the end of the video. How about checking out one of the other videos on the screen? Leave a like if you enjoyed and subscribe if you want to see more. It really helps out the channel. Comment down below with other videos you'd like to see, or head on over to the Discord. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.